everybody. Welcome back to On Texas Football. Welcome to a special live edition of On Texas Football, a Tuesday live edition of the recruiting breakdown. It is June. That means we're doing a live on Tuesday and Thursday every week leading up to the official visit weekends. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by our esteemed OTF recruiting panel. We've got Jerry Hamilton. We've got Jordan Scruggs. We've got Hank South. Jerry, as we let the chat get in here, G. Fleener wants you to know, said, I haven't seen any likely prospects here in Bogota, Jerry, just in case. I don't know if that's Bogota, Colombia, but that's doing some advanced.
I think that is where he's at. Yeah.
Okay, let's some hellacious international scouting. So good on you, G. Fleener 01. But Jerry, we'll talk Easton Royal. We'll talk the upcoming OV weekend. Got a lot to get into. But Jerry, before we do that, as everybody gets in here and gets settled, get your chat questions lined up. Super Chats, as always, jump to the front of the line. Jerry, let's give a shout out to our long-running sponsor on the recruiting breakdown. That's Mark Saunders.
Yeah, we can do that. Mark Saunders, he serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. That means, guys, he's the only insurance agent you'll need. Everything from your home, car, boat, to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV if you got one of those. Give Mark Saunders a call today. You see that number on the screen, 512-218-8571. You'll be in great hands with the over 35 years of experience that Texas alum Mark Saunders brings to the table. Again, call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Josie, I see you. Just so you know, Matthew's got his finger hovering over the block button, so please tread wisely, sir. Jerry, as we start this live stream, this live edition of the recruiting breakdown, let's go ahead and get right to it. EChem 4363. Does Texas get either or both Royal and Sales, Jerry? As we start looking ahead to this weekend, it is all about Easton Royal for the Longhorn.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's where this visit weekend begins. It's the wide receiver position. Obviously, Easton Royal it's Texas, where the commitment is, leads Florida, who I believe second, and LSU third. Doesn't mean that one of the three can't win this recruitment in December. But right now, I think that's where it's at going into this OV weekend. Man, that guy's been in that on the right's been in this huddle video for a year, it seems like now. Look, Easton Royal is going to have a number 5-6 family members in town, I believe, is what it's going to be. He had 6-7 in Florida last weekend. There's going to be the whole track part of the official visit, like LSU and Florida have done. He's already done that twice on unofficial visits at Texas. Texas was the first one to do the track part of a visit, whether it was unofficial or official, with Easton Royal. So he's been through this experience before at Texas. I think a big part of this weekend will be time spent with Steve Sarkisian. Because, look, I think you're going to see a lot of time spent between Easton Royal and his people and Steve Sarkisian this weekend. I think that's a big part of it. John Summerall's very hands-on from an official visit standpoint as a recruiter, obviously. Big difference there is Steve Sarkisian's the offensive coordinator, the play call, it's his scheme. But I think that's going to be a big part of this official visit weekend. I think Texas has confidence here, but everybody knows, guys that are recruiting him for Texas, Florida, or LSU, this is an ink is dry type of recruitment. That won't be till December, but you have to hold serve. You need to hold on to him. He's number 1 or 2 receiver in the country, top 10 prospect in the country, and a guy that's been committed to Texas since November 29th. What's so interesting when you look at his timeline of his recruitment, he committed to Texas a day before Lane Kiffin and Summerall were hired at LSU in Florida. So that's an interesting thing to look at with the recruitment. Texas had him on campus a number of times since that point in time. And I think that the relationship with Chris Jackson is a very strong one. I think the academics are very strong in Texas' favor. Again, I've always gone back to what Easton Royal told CJ Vogel and myself at the Under Armour All-America game check-in. Man, that official keeps falling too. Is that he's always he's had real interest in playing college football in the state of Texas or Florida for a while. So, look, I think this recruitment is exactly where we thought it would be right now. I think Florida believes they have a shot at it. How much of a shot? We'll see. I think Texas feels confidence, and I think LSU plays the long game in this recruitment. I don't even think if Easton Royal comes out in early July or something and says, yeah, I'm sticking with Texas, it's not like LSU's backing off this recruitment. This thing's going to go a while. They will work, even if LSU doesn't win it now, they'll try to get them on campus for a game. I mean, look, Texas plays at LSU this year, right? And they'll try to get him to a game, keep recruiting him. Nobody just walks away from recruitment like this. But I think he'll have a number of family members track will be a part of this official visit. I think the time spent with Steve Sarkisian is going to be a really big deal this weekend because the relationship with Chris Jackson is solid as a rock. They've been on the board. Everything about the scheme and his position and development, all that has been gone through many times. I think this weekend's about Steve Sarkisian and Easton Royal.
Hank,
Jerry,
go ahead, Jordan. Sorry.
I was saying, Jerry, let's say you have Taylor Searles' job and you have to design this official visit weekend for Easton Royal.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything special, unique? You know, the things that come to mind, like Brian Swanson had an hour-long FaceTime call with Kelvin Banks on Saturday. What are you doing to kind of make this weekend super special, super unique for him and the family?
I will tell you what, the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to Chris Jackson, getting his opinion. You know, does there need to be anything like this, or is this really about Steve Sarkisian and Easton Royal this weekend? But I do think, obviously, Texas has so many wideouts in the NFL, right? That it will not surprise me if Texas doesn't we see something like what happened with Brian Swanson on his visit and Kelvin Banks. But I look, I was told that Steve Sarkisian's time with Easton is going to be number 1, 2, and 3 this weekend.
Hank, you covered Alabama at a time when Sark had a hand in helping Nick Saban recruit. They were just churning out 5-star receivers after 5-star receiver. What, in your opinion, separates Easton Royal from some of the other guys you've seen, Hank? And to that end, before I go to Jordan for some intel, what is the overall your view overall on where Texas is at wide receiver right now in the 27 cycle?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. It's just his explosiveness. He's exactly what Texas is looking for, on offense in the passing game. I mean, I think back to receivers I've covered, state of Louisiana. I mean, Devontae Smith comes to mind. They're certainly different type of receivers than he was to Smitty, but I look at Easton more as like a Jalen Waddle type who, obviously Sark helped coach as well. But I mean, you just can't. He's a playmaker. He's a big play waiting to happen. I can't get that out. I'm sorry. And that just kind of separates him from the pack. I mean, there's not another receiver like him in this class, and you can see why Texas wants to hang on to him. I'm curious, going back to the conversation about his recruitment, does he want to see more from Florida this season before, maybe he would make that choice if he just did decide to flip? Because right now Florida is obviously all, projection and hype, and Summerall is going to do a good job there, I think. But there's not much to, put on tape outside of, what last year's team did. We saw Dallas Wilson do well. Obviously the other guys, Vernell Brown and whatnot. So I'm curious to see if he wants to see a little bit more, and he'll have a good opportunity as Texas plays both Florida and LSU. But in terms of where wide receiver recruiting stands, I think they're in a good position. Easton Royal is still committed. He's like Jerry said, it's not one of these situations where he's just gone quiet and we don't really know what he's doing. He's, sneaking to LSU again, or he's taking an official visit to a school we weren't expecting. He's letting everyone know what he's doing. He's remained committed. I see the headlines, it's tighter than ever. LSU makes a big jump. He's still committed to Texas. So until that changes, I think Texas fans have to be encouraged about where things stand with Easton Royal. Beyond him, Texas has made a move on Kyron Brown, the 4-star or the 3-star wide receiver from Paladuro in Amarillo, Texas. He was on campus last weekend. We expect him to join this class sooner rather than later. I think he still has a commitment date for June 23rd. Texas is trending there for Kyron Brown. And then obviously Monshin Sales is the other, big name receiver on campus this weekend, the number 2 receiver in the country to Easton Royal. What's interesting about him is he's going to be coming off an official visit to LSU that they added to the schedule late. So far, it's been Indiana, Ohio State, Alabama, and Texas. Now LSU is entering the chat for Monshin Sales. We'll certainly try to get his thoughts on that when we see him this weekend. But this will be Monshin Sales' mom's first time on campus, and he's bringing other members of his family with him. So they're going to get a good look at it. He was on campus in April by himself with members of his family and his camp. But his mom didn't see it, and she's obviously a big factor in this decision. She told me when I talked to her a few weeks back that she wants him to get back to the South. They're from Alabama. She wants him to be in the South. Obviously, he's making it as his decision. There's Indiana buzz. They live in Indiana. But I think, she wouldn't be mad if he goes south for football, and obviously that includes Alabama in there as well. So I think they're in a good spot. I think they'll add Kyron Brown eventually. I think they're in the lead to hang on to Easton Royal, and we'll see what happens with the sales.
Yeah, I think Texas has taken kind of a just kind of wait and see approach with sales this weekend, because this is not a recruitment that has a lot of history, right? It was initiated by a sales circle that would have legit interest in Texas. Texas went from there, extended the offer. Chris Jackson had conversations. They got him down on an official visit, but like Hank said, Mom hadn't been down here before. So I think this is like this still feels like an earlier stage recruitment, but of course it can't play out that way because the decision will be made before season begins. So I think Texas is more in a kind of, okay, how does this go this weekend, and see where things are at with Sales and his family after this weekend. Obviously, you would never turn down a talent like Monchun Sales, but I think the point here going into the weekend is that Texas still needs to get a feel for where this is truly at with all the people around Monchun. And that big part of that's his mom, who Hank said is this first time on campus. That's big in this recruitment.
And I should add, Jeff, sorry, real quick, I didn't even mention Bryson Thrower. He just committed on June 6th.
Yeah.
That should be a guy we're talking about plenty too. I mean, he's underrated, 6'3", 185 pounds. That was Texas's top in-state target. So you have him and Royal committed. You're in a good spot. If you can add Kyron Brown, that's great. If you can add Monchun Sales, if he wants to come, that's even better. So they're in a good spot overall with wide receiver recruiting.
Good stuff, Hank. Good stuff, Jerry. Jordan, I want to go to you real quick. Matthew, can we go ahead and put up the official visit graphic for this weekend? And Jordan, I know you've been tracking just kind of under SARC the hit rates for each official visit weekend. Jordan, so this is the third weekend. What typically does that third weekend look like based on your research, Jordan?
I think you're muted, Jordan.
Apologies. I live by a military base. They're flying planes today, so I was on mute. But Texas, they've hosted 5 third weekend of June official visit weekends under Steve Sarkisian. 76 total prospects have come on campus for OVs. 40 of them have ended up signing with Texas. So that hit rate is 52%. Now, I will add there's some nuance there. Some of those guys already went into the OV committed to Texas, but nonetheless, batting over 50-50 is always great, especially, again, when you remember there's 76 players there that they've hosted. So this weekend, they'll have 12 prospects, it looks like. So I think 6 is a good gamble. Obviously, already have 4 commitments in the boat coming in this weekend. But regardless, I mean, this is kind of what it always builds up to with Steve Sarkisian as long as he's been at Texas. It's always about the third weekend. Not only do they have commits, they have their top targets. And you have Landon Williams-Callis, Monchun Sales, like Mekhi Allen, a lot of really important guys Texas is going to take a swing at and try to leave the last impression on ahead of a 2.5-month dead period. So really important weekend this weekend and potential for a lot of fireworks.
All right, everybody, get your questions in. We're going to start running them down. Super Chats, as always, jump to the front of the line. That's why we're going to start with Rod Baber's helmet with the Super Chat. Thank you very much. Jerry, here's a blast from the past. From my high school days, DeBrian Blanton was one of the fastest in the nation at the time at Forney. Ran a 10.7. Easton out here running 10.1 is insanity to me. Jerry, my 18-year-old self is still waiting for DeBrian Blanton and a Dorian McCullough to square off in a foot race, but I guess that's to the imagination.
That's when Forney was a small town and about 900 kids in a high school, I'm guessing, before they have 2 big high schools now. DeBrian Blanton was fast before fast. I mean, like that guy would have been super, super souped up fast with the way they have a summer year-round track training that's gone to the next level since he came out of high school, and training in general, nutrition, everything that goes into it. That guy would have been souped up fast. Yeah, it's come a long ways. I think Blanton even ran faster than that, by the way. But we've come a long ways in this state in track and field. I'll tell you that.
Yep, DeBrian Blanton ran track at Oklahoma. Dorian McCullough, he was fast the one semester he was on campus at Texas in the fall of 2002. All right, let's get M. Merrill with a question. Whichever one of you guys wants to take this, feel free. Who are the possible O-line commitments? Texas sitting with a few O-line commitments right now, but what does it look like to finish out this O-line class?
Jordan, you want that?
Yeah, I think you got to start with Brian Swanson out of Dallas South Oak Cliff. State champion offensive tackle. He's also made starts, both guard spots, both tackle spots. Has been moved around each week, especially in the playoffs, depending on what Sock wants to accomplish that week. But a lot to like here, man. Texas, they've led for over 2 years. Nothing has changed. Was looking at potentially taking an OV to LSU this upcoming weekend. That's not going to happen. And getting closer and closer to a decision being made. I definitely expect it by the end of the month, possibly by the end of the week, if not likely by the end of the week. And I mean, nonetheless, this has kind of been the first top offensive tackle target for them this cycle. They offered him 2 years ago. He was yet to start a varsity game or even playing a varsity game at that point, and he camped right after his freshman year. So it's been a long time coming in this one. Texas put a lot of effort and resources into this one, and I really think it's going to pay off eventually. Then you have other guys, Lucas Roa, really, really, really important kind of swing projection. Guard, potentially right tackle. I don't really see left tackle with him, or at least at Texas. That one's Texas versus Oregon, UCLA, Penn State also hanging around there. And then after that, Caleb Seiler just came off the board to Northwestern yesterday, and I think a potential senior eval could come about. You also, of course, have Ismail Kamara, the five-star offensive tackle from Gilmer, originally from France. He'll actually be on campus in Austin on Sunday. But that recruitment is expected to go all the way till December, regardless of when a commitment is made. But that's kind of the guys off the top of my head right there. I don't know if I'm missing anyone or forgetting anyone.
Well, I think go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, real quick, Muschamp's corn dog handler, I think this kind of bleeds into the O-line talk too. He said, how's interior O-line looking? Any elite prospect, a legit shot to Texas?
Elite prospect on the board right now. I mean, look, Ismail Kamara is listed as an offensive tackle. So, I mean, he would be the highest ranked guy that you could actually say, could he actually start his career guard and kick out the tackle? But I think Jackson Cook's going to be a good player at Texas. I'll tell people that. It matters. Wearing that jersey matters to that guy. Kicking somebody's butt matters to that guy. So, elite prospects is kind of what you make of them. If you just look at a ranking, Trevor Gooseby was a 3-star by most people when he committed to Texas. He's now expected to be the first tackle off the board. I'll always say this, Cameron Williams at Duncanville was a 3-star by everybody starting his senior year, and everybody was flat out wrong. That guy should have never been a 3-star prospect, ever. All you had to do was go watch him in person. So that's kind of what you make of rankings.
Yeah, again, I think it just goes back to interior, or not just interior line, O-line just being really tough to evaluate and project. I mean, Bray Lynch wasn't that highly recruited out of Westlake High School in the Austin area, and he just started for Indiana on a national championship team and has done really, really well for himself. So, again, it's just really hard to start projecting that position. Guys, let's keep it going. Joe Z says, is John Meredith supposed to commit this week, or is he still going to take another visit?
I do not expect another visit. We'll double check on that, but we're not expecting an OB. I think the number one thing John's been dealing with was the UIL ruling. And we said that last week that he was going to have last Thursday. We kind of said, hey, he's going to have his hearing on Thursday. Obviously, he's been ruled ineligible. So I think he's dealing with a lot of stuff around that right now. There's an appeal process. If your appeal process is declined or you don't win that, then what do? Do you go transfer out of state, play somewhere, maybe a private school? The in-state is a possibility, or do you sit and train as a December graduate? I think that's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. We still have not heard anything different. I mean, we think Texas is in a good spot there, but in all these recruitments, you got to go close these things out and you got to get it done. So we'll be checking in again. We do not expect a visit this weekend, but we'll check in again here this evening.
Jordan got one for you from David Keith Williams. Said you previously mentioned that Carnell Greedy James was a souped-up Jalen Gilbo. At least that's what I think you stated. Do you see similarities between James and Yaheem Riley?
Yeah, that is correct. I have kind of comped him, compared him to a souped-up Jalen Gilbo. Just from a nickel corner perspective, built similarly, similar track time, similar profiles, somewhat similar tape. As far as comping him to Yaheem Riley, Miami Riley, that's his nickname. Yeah, I can see it. I do think nickels, both in their future at Texas, some safety as well. Riley is more of a nickel and safety than anything else, not a corner, where I view James as kind of a nickel and corner more than safety. So there's some similarities there. James is taller, he's longer, he's tested better, is faster, twitchier, but and because of that, does have a higher ceiling. But with Riley, really good mental eval there always, I thought. I mean, this was a kid who got a job at Whataburger so he could afford training, to pay for training. This is a kid that would ride the Austin Metro bus like an hour from South Austin to LBJ to get to and from school if he couldn't get picked up. And that was legal, by the way. They have early college certifications. You don't have to live inside the school zone.
It's too late to get ruled ineligible anyways.
Yeah, that too. But Miami Riley was always going to figure it out one way or another, getting out of LBJ, getting into college at a Power 4 school. And he got to accomplish his dream. He always wanted to go to Texas. So I've always been higher on him than his ranking or stars or whatever you want to call it. But James, I would say, is the higher ceiling prospect, higher chance early playing time there.
I'm going to bring one up real quick. I'm just going to address it real quick. What happened to Dylan Mitchell, CE King? Did he choose track over football? He's a 2028. He has not made a decision yet. He has been on campus this summer as a football recruit while also running AAU track. By the way, now has a Wikipedia page at 16, so congrats to him on that. But he has not made that decision yet. What I believe will happen is he's 5'8", 5'8.5" right now. His brother, who plays football at Texas State, grew 3 inches late in high school, headed into college. I think if Dylan Mitchell grows a little bit, gets the 5'10", 5'11", which widens gives him a higher upside in track, I think you'll see him go pro track eventually.
Good
Based
stuff,
on a conversation I had in the spring at a track meet.
Good stuff, Jerry. Thank you for that. Until Hank, I'm gonna throw this one to you because Josie asked, why has linebacker recruiting been a big woof this cycle? Hank, this weekend Texas could get some stuff sorted out at linebacker.
Yeah, I answered this. There was a question in a story on Texas football last night about this. In my opinion, and not trying to put on burnt orange tinted glasses here, I think Toa Satele is the one linebacker miss so far that really stings. In terms of, I think Texas had some confidence there. Oregon came in over the top, were able to get him to commit, didn't even visit Texas. That stinks. He was a big target. Beyond that, I mean, not taking away from these players, Joakim Gouda, that was going to be a tough pull from Georgia from day one. That kid had pressure to go to Georgia. He committed to Georgia. It's not a shock. Texas moved off of Jeremiah Culpepper out of Georgia. That wasn't a guy they even decided to bring in for an official visit. Liked him in the spring. He felt him a little bit more, decided to go elsewhere. Beyond that, we'll see. Like you mentioned, Mekhi Allen, does he show up this weekend? There's some buzz about him maybe visiting Syracuse. He tweeted about that in May for June 18th through 20th. I'm curious to see if he makes it. Obviously, Texas would really love him to make it because they're trying to battle with Texas A&M to try to get his commitment. The Aggies have some confidence there. Jarrell Bridges, obviously kind of a guy they've circled back on, or a late eval, late offer, committed to Houston. They're going to bring in for an OV this weekend. A little bit undersized, but really productive player at Midlothian. And then we'll see where they go. I think as you look at it, let's see what happens with Mekhi Allen this weekend if he shows up. See what happens with the Jarrell Bridges. Have Cade Hogg committed. You have a heck of an overhang edge room committed currently with the 3 guys you have in the fold. And then go into the season and perhaps get a senior eval. A guy like Rocky Cummings. They wasn't on anyone's radar entering November last year. He ends up at Texas and has had a really strong spring and looks like he could be a guy down the road. Or obviously, we saw the portal be really kind to Texas at the linebacker position this year as well. But I think it's too early to say they're missing on there. This has been linebacker recruiting has been a problem. I think Satele is the one that stings, and let's see how it closes out this weekend and going in.
I was going to add the next one. I mean, a guy that Texas absolutely loves is Izzy Hammonds, and they have loved him. And it looks like right now that's looking more Oklahoma State over Texas coming up with a decision on Friday. I think something would have to change there. I don't know where it's coming from. I got a couple of DMs that were like, the Texas back off Izzy Hammonds? And I'm like, no, well, what are you talking about? Texas loved Izzy Hammonds. Will Muschamp went up there for 4 hours. He was as high on the board at linebacker as anybody. So I don't know where that's coming from, but if anybody's being told Texas backed off Izzy Hammonds, that's straight up BS.
Yeah, Jordan, I know you've been following the Izzy Hammonds recruitment too, but in terms of the portal, Hank brought it up, like linebacker is one of those positions where like you've got a lot invested, quite frankly, in your 3 freshman linebackers with Tyler Atkinson, Rocky Cummings, and Kosi Okpala. They've shown, whether it's been you look back at a Diamante Tucker Dorsey or going to get a Justin Cryer, like if you need somebody as a stopgap option, you can go get one out of the portal. It's not ideal, but there are options in the portal if you just need to get a roster spot.
Oh yeah, I mean they certainly exist, from depth pieces to top of the line starters, Rasheem Biles or Keaton Thomas, the kid out of Baylor that ended up at Ole Miss and is supposed to spearhead that defense and be the top guy on defense for them this year. So they definitely exist. They're more plentiful than, top plug and play offensive tackles or top plug and play interior D linemen. But I mean, they exist and they're worthwhile taking a look at. Now, I will say one thing I thought of when Hank was bringing up linebackers and kind of the dynamics with linebacker recruiting. Think about the class they signed last year, right? And think about, like, at QB, Texas signed Diabell this year. They have Ty Newton committed. Is Newton a better prospect than KJ Lacey, Arch Manning, or Diabell were out of high school? No, by no means. No one will argue that. But is anyone making a big deal out of them having Ty Newton committed instead of a 5-star the year after Diabell? No, because it's going to be hard and only one guy can play at a time. Linebacker's a little different, but you kind of see what I'm saying, where because you signed such a good class last year, it's not quite as big of a deal if you end up missing on some guys this year. And also think about senior season for the 2027 class. There will be flips. I write this story like every single year in September and then put it out in November again. Every single year, Texas has flipped at least one, if not two, if not three kids from programs that either have their head coach fired or they're going down the drain. Anthony Hill, yes, Jimbo Fisher, he didn't get fired till the following year, and Ty Anthony Smith flipped from A&M to Texas. But Anthony Hill was in Kyle Field when A&M lost to Appalachian State. He was there. And he was there whenever they ended up losing like 5 more games in a row later in that season. They had a stretch where they lost 5 in a row. He was at a few of those as well, and they flipped him. Who got fired at Cal last year? Justin Wilcox. Who flipped from Cal last year? Rocky Cummings. Think about the people who are going to be on the hot seat this year. Does South Carolina have any dynamic linebackers committed? I don't know, but I can tell you I don't think Shane Beamer is still coaching at South Carolina come December. Like, there are several avenues that will end up being taken in a few months from now. And I do think looking back towards those ailing programs going down the drain, that could have a commitment or a commitment list that has a few guys that Texas would want to poach from. So that's kind of just that came to mind once he was talking about Rocky Cummings.
Yeah, Roger G and Rapid Com 817. Jerry, I think this is a good place as we start to wind this down. This is a good place to go, piggybacking off what Jordan just said. Rapid Com 817 says, do you guys ever see Sark changing his recruiting strategy to attack and build future classes earlier, i.e. A&M? Or do you see him continuing to play more of the long game? And to that end, Roger G3 asks, who do y'all think will be top flip candidates going into the season? Excited to see the visitor list when the Ohio State game happens.
Yeah, so on that first part, look, I think a lot of it depends on what is your retention looking like off the team you have going into a season. And I do believe this. And look, Texas wants to have the best high school class they can. Look at all the guys they brought in, they're battling for. I think they're going to end up with a top 10 class once again. We'll see if they get into that top 5 range. I think they have the possibilities to do that. We'll see how the next 2 weeks as we in June go as far as that goes. But look, there's as much of a in the building, there's as much of a emphasis on there's a lot of guys we need to retain off this team.
Yeah.
I mean, there are going to be a lot of NFL decisions. Then you have a 5-year rule coming into play. That changes the game a little bit as well with potentially 2-3 type of guys that you could retain. So I think there's as much of a push in retention on this team coming up because Texas feels like they have a really, really talented roster and they don't want to lose too much of this roster to the NFL or more than they currently expect to. So I think there's kind of in-house in Austin, there's a little bit of both of this. We want to sign really good high school players. We want the best class we can. But we can't do it at the expense of retention possibilities. So it's a real balancing act. So do I think Sark will – the long-winded answer is I think it depends on what you need in your program at the time is how heavy you go on high school recruiting, how aggressive do you go early on some of these guys. It's not really Sark's MO. I thought moving up the OVs for him was probably pretty big for Sark, because that's not traditionally how he's like to recruit. But with the changes in how these guys are making decisions, the changes in how colleges are approaching NIL, giving more expiration dates on contracts now to more guys when they visit, I think it's kind of changed the game. Everybody knew the game was going to move at a faster speed, and Sark adjusted to that. Do I ever see Sark, guys? I would Joel's opinion too. Do we ever see Sark going early as aggressive as A&M has or USC did last year? I'm not sure I see that.
I think he's happy with their method. I mean, there's really no point to do that. Going early essentially just puts a target on your back, unless you can get situations where, you shut down kids, they don't visit anymore or take any more visits. It kind of just, that kind of sets the target. And Sark's mentioned that before. I've asked him about it at the coaches convention. It's like, he's talked about they're pretty good closing how they want to close. I think he likes the strategy. We get to this point in June and early July the last few years, and the panic starts to set in. I think it's premature this year. Certainly, I can understand it. The last couple of years, Felix Oja, everyone freaked out. Corey Moore the year before. Texas typically rebounds and enters the year enters the season in a pretty strong position. So I don't think they have any intention of changing their strategy, and I think people need to set their expectations that it's not an era now where you can load up on a 25-man class of high-priced recruitments. I mean, you're going to get a front-loaded, probably 8 to 10 guys that are NIL guys, and then you got to have to fill in the rest of the class with developmental guys, because you have 105 roster spots. You kind of have to almost build, I don't want to call it a practice squad, but you have to have these developmental pieces to fill out the roster, because you're not just going to fill your class with elite tier NIL recruitments. It would be irresponsible financially from what they're trying to do. And you mentioned with retention too, that costs a lot to bring this roster back to what they have this year. That was a lot of money. I think people don't take into account, keeping a guy, and not that, the guys were at risk of leaving, but Colin Simmons, every school in America would want to Colin Simmons. They were able to retain him. Grayson Littleton was a big retention. I mean, you can almost look at these as recruiting wins, being able to keep these guys for another season.
Yeah, a couple of things here. I'm gonna end this with a question to follow up to Jordan. But look, these flips take a long time. We've been trying to flip Joe Z from Oregon to Texas for 2 years now, and it's still a battle. These flips take a long time. All right, Jordan, question. This is a good follow-up. AJJ1213. Is it harder to flip kids these days with the contracts in place?
It is a case-by-case situation. And honestly, a fair amount of the time, because like in the state of Texas, it is technically illegal for kids to be paid right now before they sign a letter of intent and are enrolled. That's not stopping several schools in state and out of state from still paying these kids. These parents, not all of them know that it's illegal. Not all of them know that you can go to another school doing the same thing and get them to back pay the other school that was paying you originally. A lot of it depends on just, again, the case-by-case situation. So is it harder to flip kids? I should say yes for some of the top priority ones, like Honor File Eve Johnson, committed to USC, was planning on taking all of his OVs and then commits out of the blue in March. How does that happen? You tell me. Mark Bowman was similar. He wanted to take all his OVs. USC squeezes him, shuts it down. That same week it's reported he's getting a multi-million-dollar and multi-year NIL deal and is already getting paid as a high schooler. Easy to assume the same with Honor File Eve Johnson, and he's since shut down his recruitment. So for those top guys, once they're kind of locked in and are already getting paid, especially in states where it's legal, it's kind of impossible. But at the same time, if you're Texas in this current era, like you can go flip a kid from Florida or an SEC school by saying, hey, they're paying you $400K. We want you really bad. Here's $600. You have to flip right now, though. That kid's going to flip. So there are pros and cons to it for sure. If I had to say, is it harder or easier than it was 10 years ago? I would just say situationally it matters. It depends, and would go right in the even. But it is a fascinating debate.
Hey, Jeff, real quick. Landon Williams, I know we got a super chat we're going to close on. Peter the Great, Landon Williams, Callis update. Texas A&M, Oregon, probably Texas A&M considered your top two right now. Well, we'll see what happens this week at Texas is where we're at. He hadn't been on campus in a while. This will be his 7th official visit, by the way, almost a record, or maybe tied for a record.
All right, got a couple of super chats before we're done here. Juan Garza with a super chat, thank you. Juan said, "Is there a Tyler Atkinson in this class that Texas wasn't in on? And can they flip and can they get him? Do we know who that is?"
Well, Texas was in on Atkinson for a while, so right now, no. Is there a guy like that? Look, if Texas ever circled back and got in later on a 5-star guy, it'd probably be DJ Jacobs. There's some real. I mean, he remains committed to Ohio State. Obviously, Miami's in that picture. Texas has had conversations with him and has continued to recruit him, but I don't think that was anything that Texas thought would move in June or in the summer. If that moves at all, it would be closer to signing day.
All right, thank you, Jerry. And then Drew Lockhart with the super chat. Thank you, Drew, for the super chat. Says, with 5 for 5, could Rasheem Biles stay on the 40 in 2027? Guys, I mean, I'd put that maybe slightly better than the chances Arch Manning returns.
Yeah, I mean, look, but that's where we're at in reality. There's two guys, and look, I think Biles is a tremendous player, and I think he'll end up going to the NFL draft. I think he's going to have a great year as long as he stays healthy. What about Bo Masco? So this is where it gets interesting. Now, if you're a top 3-round pick, the money's so great and it's so different now in the NFL draft that you're going to go and you should go. What if you're right outside that? You know, I think that's where it gets interesting. He was the one I'm really watching from a 5-year standpoint, guys. Right now, there's a couple others that, you know, are possibilities, but I think Bo Masco is one to that I think Texas will try to work on. It depends on how – look, if Bo Masco's season goes to the level of spring did, then he'll be off the table too. The guy had 48 pass breakups and 15 spring practices. Not that he's going to have 3.5 a game in the SEC, but he went way beyond expectations this spring, like way beyond expectations. If he goes beyond expectations on the field on Saturdays, then that won't be a possibility of him returning either.
Yeah.
What about Raleek Brown? Is he in year 5 this season or year 4?
This is year 5.
This is him, the 5 for him. Yeah.
Okay.
So Hollywood Smothers maybe. Although he's going into his
he's already able to come back next year.
Yeah.
A Colton Vosick would be a guy. You know, depending on like there's like 5 or 6. CJ Vogel wrote an article that I think Bo Masco and Biles are the two that people will talk about. But look, I think Biles is going to play like an All-American this year. I'll be surprised if he doesn't.
Sorry, last thing. So Andre Kojo was class of 2023. He's in year 5 or year 4 in Austin this fall. He redshirted like a normal red shirt. He also could use last year as a medical red shirt. Will he be able to still be on the team in 2028? Do we know that, even if they pass 5 for 5?
I think it's grandfathered in.
Okay.
But I'm not sure how many guys are going to get that extra year that they petition for.
Yeah, but that could really help Kojo because he enrolled as a 16-year-old.
16-year-old, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Brad Spence is the other one, Jerry, that's a true senior this year, that depending on the NFL eval, what they say.
That's the third one, yeah.
Yeah, Jordan, like we talked about it. I know we got to go, but Jordan, we talked about it, the situation with Jade, even though it was, you know, COVID eligibility, it was so unique because he played nickel. And I know you were getting the draft feedback on him, and he was like, hey, the NFL doesn't draft nickels. You got to have some serious tape at corner. He came back and went from being maybe like a day 3 type guy to being a 1st-round pick. That's rare that happens, but that's the kind of situation where a guy could benefit from the 5th year.
No doubt.
All right, guys. Anything else before we wrap it up?
No. Big game baseball. Somebody asked about baseball recruiting. I don't have anything in baseball recruiting wise, portal wise on that yet. We're watching for softball stuff is what we're watching for.
Yeah, it's been a challenge for them to recruit in the portal while they've been in Omaha. I'll say this, though, speaking of player retention, Jerry, I think you talked about it, Hank, you might have mentioned it too. Look, when Schloss starts to build out this roster from whatever your pool is, bringing back Dylan Valanis and Adrian Rodriguez and Anthony Pack and Sam Cozart, those guys are not going to be cheap in terms of their market value to bring them back. So just keep that in mind as they build this roster. All right, Jerry, Hank, Jordan, thank you guys for the knowledge, the intel, the expertise, as always. Huge thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, producing it, doing the great job he does for us here at On Texas Football, the MVP at On Texas Football, as I call him. And thank you, everybody, for your chat questions, especially the super chat. You have something real quick, Jerry?
Yeah, Isaac Reese, what the early return on basketball portal arrivals? I'm actually going to write a story about that. Their weekend to workouts with the coaches. I'm going to have a story on that on TexasFootball.com either later today or in the morning.
And if you want Jerry's article and more from over at OnTexasFootball.com, if you're not a subscriber, now is the time to get over there and take advantage of the limited time offer. We've got $3 for your first 3 months of access at OnTexasFootball.com. That's not $3 per month. That's $3 for 3 months of access at OnTexasFootball.com. Let me tell you, nobody in the Texas market is covering recruiting better than the OTF staff. So again, make sure you get over there ahead of the OV weekend. $3 for your first 3 months of access at OnTexasFootball.com. Hey, before we're done, make sure you hit that like button and like this video. Make sure that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel, and make sure you've got your notifications set so that way anytime we go live or drop a new video, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage or breaking news. For Jerry, for Hank, for Jordan, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, hook 'em.